dear students, and welcome to our virtual English classes. My name is Emma Matreniuc, and I am English language teacher. So, today we are going to discuss a very interesting topic that is called intercultural dialogue and intercultural communication. Please have a look at our first slide. Oh, here you see several words that are different in different languages, but they all mean the same. Salut, hi, hello, hola, privet, ciao, bonjour, and many other words that mean the way you salute people. And look at this amazing picture where people are talking. Why do we study intercultural communication? It's indeed a very interesting question. So, today in class we will learn the new notions, we will give the definition to new terms, we will discuss the essence of intercultural dialogue and intercultural communication, we will find out the historical background and understand the importance of communication. So, tell us please, do you remember what culture is? Why is it important to communicate? And what a dialogue is? Of course you do, of course you remember, because communication and dialogue is something very important when people interact and live together. And culture is important too. And you probably remember that culture is a characteristic of a particular group of people, defined by everything from language, religion, cuisine, social habits, music and arts. Today, in the United States, as in other countries populated largely by immigrants, the culture is influenced by the many groups of people that now make up the country. And of course, culture is important because we understand each other better. And the cultures interact means that people also interact. So, intercultural dialogue. It occurs when members of different cultural groups who hold conflicting opinions and assumptions speak to one another in acknowledgement of those differences. It builds upon the concept of dialogue, which refers to at least two people holding a conversation. And it builds upon the term intercultural, which is typically used to refer to people communicating across differences in nationality, race and ethnicity or region. And now you see how important intercultural dialogue is, how fruitful intercultural communication might be. Dialogue has several meanings. It sometimes refers to dialogue in a script, which simply means people talking, but more often it refers to a quality of communication characterized by the participants' willingness and ability simultaneously to be radically open to the others and to articulate their own views. Dialogue's primary goal is understanding rather than agreement. And this is true, because when you dialogue and when you communicate, our aim is to understand each other and to have peaceful communication. So now, before we talk and proceed deeper into this topic, let's look at these wonderful words from column A and column B and try to match them. In column A, you see different nationalities, and in column B, you see things that they are doing. So let's match them. What Italians, Chinese, British people, Canadians, French, Japanese, and Scots do? Okay, let's see. Chinese cook lots of noodles and rice. The Scots wear kilts on special occasions. Who produces champagne? The French. Who eat raw fish? The Japanese, you're right. The British invented football. The Italians eat a lot of pasta. And the Canadians often watch ice hockey on TV. Isn't it interesting? Of course it is. And we surely need to know all these peculiarities if we, let's say, travel to a country or if we communicate to one of the representatives of one or another country or nationality. Okay, so let's look into this question more deeper. A World Guide to Good Manners says, How not to behave badly abroad. Today people travel a lot. Traveling to all corners of the world gets easier and easier, and we live in a global village. But it doesn't mean that we all behave in the same way. Global village is actually our world, our virtual or real world. Look at this picture, please. Tell us, what do you see at this picture? Different people meeting each other, but they seem to not understand very well each other. They want to greet, but they don't understand how to greet. And it is probably because they don't know, but we have to know it. So, greetings. How should you behave when you meet someone for the first time? An American or Canadian shakes your hand firmly while looking you straight in the eyes. In many parts of Asia, there is no physical contact at all. In Japan, you should bow, and the more respect you want to show, the deeper you should bow. In Thailand, the greeting is made by pressing both hands together at the chest, as if you are praying and bowing your head slightly. In both countries, eye contact is avoided as a sign of respect. Think a little bit about your country. Think about the ways you greet people. Think how in your country people do this and whether this is acceptable in another country. And of course, you have to know all these details. Clothes. Many countries have rules about what you should and shouldn't wear. For example, in Asian and Muslim countries, you shouldn't reveal the body, especially women, who should wear long-sleeved blouses and skirts below the knee. In Japan, you should take off your shoes when entering a house or a restaurant. Remember to place them neatly together, facing the door you came in. This is also true in China, Korea, Thailand, and Iran. Keep in mind these traditions and these customs and think about your own country. Do you enter barefooted in somebody's place? Do you leave your foot somewhere or shoes somewhere? Well, next is food and drink. Next is cuisine. Okay, in Italy, Spain, and Latin America, lunch is often the biggest meal of the day and can last 2 or even 3 hours. For this reason, many people eat a light breakfast and a late dinner. In Britain, you might have a business lunch and do business as you eat. In Mexico and Japan, many people prefer not to discuss business while eating. Lunch is time to relax and socialize, and the Japanese rarely drink alcohol at lunchtime. However, in Britain and the United States, it's not unusual to have a business meeting over breakfast. And in China, it's common to have business banquets, but you shouldn't discuss during the meal. It's interesting, right? So think about it, keep it in mind when you go somewhere, when you are invited somewhere, or when you wait to invite someone for a lunch or for a drink. Doing business, another interesting and important issue. In most countries, an exchange of business cards is essential for all introductions. You should include your company name and your position. If you are going to a country where your language is not widely spoken, you can get the reverse side of your card printed in the local language. It's an interesting notice. In Japan, you must present your card with both hands, with the writing facing the person you are giving it to. In many countries, business hours are from 9 or 10 a.m. to 5 or 6 p.m. However, in some countries, such as Greece, Italy, and Spain, some people close in the early afternoon for a couple of hours, then remain open until the evening. Japanese business people consider it their professional duty to go out after work with colleagues to restaurants, bars, or nightclubs. If you are invited, you shouldn't refuse, even if you don't feel like staying out late. So you see how many important things are stated here, so keep them in mind. And now we have extra tips for a good dialogue. Look at these pictures, please. You probably recognize famous, prominent figures worldwide known. See how they salute people. See what there is on the picture. Okay, in many Asian cultures, it is acceptable to smack your lips when you eat. It means that the food is good. Do you do the same in your culture? Do you do the same in your country? In France, for example, you shouldn't sit down in a cafe until you've shaken hands with everyone you know. And it's really, really nice for them. In India and the Middle East, you must never use the left hand for greeting, eating, or drinking. In China, for example, your host will keep refilling your dish unless you lay your chopsticks across your bowl. So think about your chopsticks. Most South Americans and Mexicans like to stand very close to the person they're talking to. You shouldn't back away. And do you do the same in your culture? In Ireland, social events sometimes end with singing and dancing. You may be asked to sing. And probably you've seen that in other cultures too. In America, you should eat your hamburger with both hands and as quickly as possible. You shouldn't try to have a conversation until it is eaten. You see how many extra important tips you have here, so keep them in mind. Okay, now let's make a true and false exercise. Let's decide if the following statements are false or true, and let's correct them. Number 1. In Japan, you pressing both hands together at the chest to greet somebody. False. Because in Thailand, you pressing both hands together at the chest to greet somebody. And it looks like this. In Thailand and Iran, you should take off your shoes when entering a home. It's true. In China, you have the possibility to discuss business during a business banquet. It's false. In China, it's common to have business banquet, but you shouldn't discuss during the meal. Number 4. In Japan, it is not common to go out after work with work colleagues to a restaurant, bar, or nightclub. It's false. In Japan, if you are invited to go out after work with colleagues to restaurants, bars, or nightclubs, you shouldn't refuse, even if you don't feel like staying out late. 5. Most Mexicans prefer to keep a distance of 1.5 meters from the person they are talking to. It's false. Most Mexicans like to stand very close to the person they are talking to. Okay, so we go back to our intercultural communication, understanding an important issue. Look at the picture, please. Here you see an example of cultural difference. People want to greet, and if you are communicating with someone who represents another culture, another race, another part of the world, you should definitely know their customs and traditions. In America, for example, people shake hands and even hug each other. But in India, for example, hands are joined to say namaskar. And intercultural communication as a domain deals with all these peculiarities: greetings, clothing, cuisine, business interaction. But intercultural communication is a notion that is used to denote an adequate and mutual understanding of two participants of a communicative process, where each belongs to to different national cultures. So, intercultural communication is actually a mixture of various domains from different things that people do and activate in. It is culturology and sociology. It's history and literature. It's psychology, anthropology, linguistics. And you see that representatives from all these and many other domains need to know how to communicate correctly, how to interact. So we cannot proceed if you don't know a little bit about historical background. The development of intercultural communication in the United States and Europe actually started after the World War II politics, economy, and cultural issues all over the world became extremely important. You know that these events shook the world, so it definitely changed human mind. Another important thing, it was Peace Corps volunteers who appeared in different countries in the 20th century. And of course, the creation of the European Union that took place. So all these important events definitely influenced the development of intercultural communication. And of course, we cannot forget about Edward Hall, who was the father of all these issues. He was the linguist who headed the Institute for Science Abroad, and one of his famous quotations sounds like this: "If culture can be studied, then it can be taught." So it means that we can easify communication. We can make it easier, more interesting, and more fruitful if we know our interlocutor, if you know the other culture. Edward Hall was a cultural anthropologist. He had a degree in Columbia University. He was one of the founders of the intercultural communication study and best known for his work in intercultural communication. So, intercultural communication has also ancient origins. First of all, it comes from the word philo, that means love, affection, dear, and friend. And the word communication actually means communis, that means common. So people love communicating, people have an affection to communicate and to interact. So this famous picture says, keep calm and learn languages. And do you know why? Of course, it's because we cannot talk about communication, fruitful dialogue, if we don't know different languages. A language needs to be studied, and it needs to be studied in a tight connection with the culture and unity with the world where people speak it. Look at these pictures. Here people interact, they talk, they salute each other, they communicate. They use different traditional methods and modern approaches. They know how to communicate verbally, orally, in written form. They know the conditions and norms of etiquette. They need to be polite. They know the forms of verbal and non-verbal communication through gestures and mimics. And of course, this is very useful for us to know. Here we also have some tips for effective intercultural dialogue. Let's look through this list and think if we can use them in our day-to-day life or in some official meetings. It's very important to be honest. It's important to be flexible, to know how to listen actively. It's important to respect differences and, of course, ask questions. If you know how to ask questions, you are a good listener too. We have to build self-awareness and to know what we represent. We have to avoid stereotyping because it leads to discrimination. We need to know how to distinguish perspectives and be prominent in this. Think twice before you say something and recognize the complexity. We hope that these tips indeed are very important. And then we have a question: how to learn to improve intercultural communication skills? Of course, we need to study other cultures, to know or study other languages, write and speak clearly, respect preferences for communication style, listen carefully, use interpreters, translators, and translation software if you need it, and of course help others adapt to your culture. And of course we can name communication as Her Majesty communication, because as you have seen, it is all over the world, in all the spheres of our communication, of our activities, and of our studies. It rules people, their lives, development, behavior, knowledge as a part of this world. It leads to mutual understanding. It is tolerance and respect between the partners. It forms fruitful dialogue of cultures, and it definitely creates peace. So far for today, dear students. Hope you found a lot of new and important things in this topic, and welcome to peaceful communication in our English classes.